This is Brother Safo, Minister of Information of the New African Blood Brotherhood. This is Message to the Brotherhood in Philadelphia. Being a native of the city of Philadelphia and being born in 1969, a nascent period of the Black liberation struggle, where the slogan, "It's Nation Time," was the prevailing sentiment. I can remember the phrase Black unity being on the lips of everybody, from Black politicians to street hustlers. And being from the latter group and deeply immersed in street culture, I was closer to the pulse of the hood than those who were baptized in the illusions of their so-called middle-class existence. So when I got exposed to some old speeches of Minister Malcolm X and later the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it had an immediate impact on my then sense of inquisitiveness, along with my inherent desire to simply belong. While serving a stint in one of Philadelphia's juvenile gladiator schools, I was given the book, Message to the Black Man, from a brother named Milton Shabazz, who I would later learn was the son of Philadelphia standout Minister Jeremiah Shabazz. This book would shift my entire worldview. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad's words, though simple in their prose, carried the weight of the world. A new world. But it wouldn't be until I entered the volatile environment of the city's notorious Holmesburg prison that I would fully join the Nation of Islam, where I was trained in a virtual FOI academy, which was established by ultra-militant Minister Kelvin X. Mars and others who had come before him. And from this, not only did I gain a sense of self-respect and militancy, but also a strong bond with others who had come from the same mud of society. The Nation of Islam was maybe a decade into its second resurrection, with Minister Louis Farrakhan emerging as its de facto national representative. Prior to that, it had been taken over by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's son, Wallace Dean Muhammad, in 1975, who had betrayed the core principles upon which the nation stood, even slandering his father's good name in the process. And so, with Wallace's life hanging in the balance, he sought protection from a cadre of FOIs from Philadelphia, who were themselves convinced that Wallace's transition from the first resurrection to a Middle Eastern Orthodox version of Islam was a natural progression. This breakaway by overthrow would cause a wide split in the ranks, which would be both justified and sustained by theological interpretations of the very same scriptures that once bonded the entire brotherhood. This would in turn give rise to several and often contending factions of the Nation of Islam, with each faction claiming to be the one. And this fight for who would gain a monopoly on Black liberation theology spawned many domineering and charismatic personalities, which would come to overshadow Black liberation altogether. Government spies and snitches in bow ties would do their part to both provoke and to promote the infighting. And as a consequence, the fight for freedom from the white devil's system of oppression would become all but nullified. Wallace's loyalists wouldn't fare any better, as they would be bounced from pillar to post within the orthodox world of an ever-changing doctrine steeped in Arab culture, but dressed up as real Islam, but with enough latent racial tropes to bind them back into the psychological chains of Black self-hatred that their NOI teachings had previously broken them out of. In a more broader view, however, all factions, none excluded, will become relegated to mere rituals and ceremonial posturing, devoid of any tangible nation-building activity. In fact, if not for the newspapers and bean pies, along with a sales pitch that could rival any parasitic capitalist, today's NOI, quite sadly, would be indistinguishable from your common street merchant, leaving many to feel hustled instead of healed. And the prison movement, which was once tightly knitted to the brotherhood in the street, have long been abandoned, notwithstanding the shell of a prison ministry which seems to be bent on picking the meager pockets of the captive believers instead of setting them at liberty. So instead of lawyers and other material support in the way of freedom, they are given lesser lessons, demanding fealty and obedience to leadership, and yet they mistake disillusionment for defection and a heightened sense of revolutionary awareness for hypocrisy. So now so-called brothers in the so-called free world have taken to uttering such nonsense as, "I don't owe anybody anything," which bespeaks of either their lack of understanding of true brotherhood or their willful neglect of the unspoken oath that was supposed to seal our bond. These types, not surprisingly, can now be found cavorting with Shah Moodis and Yahudis for their social and economic survival. The very people who share different seats on the same colonial pedestal from which the oppression of us all is being facilitated. Willie Lynch and his lineal successor, J. Edgar Hoover, must be smiling. Philadelphia as a city was established in the year 1682 by European colonizers. In fact, the very name Philadelphia is Greek and comes from philia, meaning love, and Adolphus, meaning brother, which gave it its moniker, the city of brotherly love. Only blacks wasn't included in this brotherhood, as they were chattel property during the period. It wouldn't be until the turn of the 20th century and the coming of figures like Cyril Briggs, Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Garvey, and Elijah Muhammad that the concept of brotherhood among blacks in Philadelphia would coalesce into a virtual institution where blacks greeting or generally addressing one another as brother or sister became commonplace. Moreover, the love between brothers and sisters was felt. It wasn't until the Arabs, Asians, and others from outside of the race came along posing as friends and allies along with their foreign ideologies that we saw a mass deviation from the concept of race-first loyalty. Fast forward to the now times, and as we can see, the social landscape of the city bears very little resemblance of the brotherhood that once was among its black population. Many of the civic, cultural, religious, and other groupings that once stood for and advocated black unity in practice and not just in rhetoric have been sidelined. Some simply went dark, while others have been co-opted and absorbed into the local political matrix to serve as gatekeepers for the custodians of the system that feeds off of our misery and disunity, the kind of treasonous treachery that can never be forgiven. Gone are the days of men and women like Cecil B. Moore, Roxanne Jones, Dave Richardson, and other black politicos from that historical ilk who challenged the white racist status quo on behalf of the city's black people. A vast departure from many of today's black politicians who secretly aid and abet the gentrification of the hood and other forms of economic disinvestment. Hell, the Philadelphia Black Mafia had more integrity. For a city that once had a Black Unity Council, a Revolutionary Action Movement, a Black Liberation Army, the Move family, a Black Panther Party, and other black community-centered formations that were well capable of organizing our people around purpose and self-determination. It is downright shameful to now see our black youth trapped in a cycle of horizontal violence against each other, with little or no legitimate guidance other than the city-appointed grant money-chasing fair-weather activists with little street credibility than an AI-generated hologram. And with the American empire itself careening toward a socioeconomic collapse, despite its technological advances, which has prompted it to remove the velvet glove from its iron fist, exposing a more naked form of oppression as it is being manifested in the increase of militarized police occupation and surveillance of the black community. It is the greatest indicator that if we as a people do not get it together, our future is doomed. Of course, there are many other elements and nuances that need to be unpacked here. So, to more concretely resolve our collective issues, we will have to address this in part 2. So until next time, stay vigilant and stay dangerous. Salutes to the Move family, the Garveyites, the NOI, the new Black Panther Party, the committed activists, the Uhuru movement, the new African Blood Brotherhood, and the Pan-African community as a whole who never abandoned the struggle. Aou.